It was the year 632 in Medina. The Prophet Muhammad had just passed away, leaving behind a community that had grown from a small group of believers into a powerful and united society. The streets of the city were heavy with silence and sorrow. Many could not accept the reality of his departure. For more than 2 decades, he had been the guiding light, the leader in both faith and worldly affairs. Every dispute was settled by his wisdom, every decision carried the weight of his authority. Now, for the first time, the Muslim community faced a challenge unlike any battle they had fought, a question with no clear answer in the Prophet's absence. Who would lead them? Who could carry the responsibility of guiding a people who had only ever known one leader? The grief of loss was now mixed with uncertainty, and that uncertainty would soon ignite one of the most decisive moments in Islamic history. When the news spread across Medina, it struck the people like a storm. Many refused to believe it. Hearts trembled, eyes filled with tears, and confusion swept through the city. Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the Prophet's closest companions, could not accept the reality. He stood before the people, his voice shaking yet filled with force, declaring that Muhammad had not died. He warned that anyone who claimed otherwise would face his anger. To Umar, it was unthinkable that the messenger of God could be taken from them so suddenly. He cried out that Muhammad would return, just as Moses had returned to his people after disappearing for 40 nights on Mount Sinai. The community was torn between denial and despair. Some clung to hope that their beloved prophet would come back, while others sank into sorrow, realizing that the light of their leader had truly been extinguished. In those moments of chaos, the future of the Muslim community hung in the balance, waiting for a voice that could bring clarity and calm. Meanwhile, in a shaded hall known as the Saqifah of Banu Sa'idah, the leaders of the Ansar, the helpers of Medina, had gathered in haste. They were the ones who had opened their homes to the Prophet and his followers when they fled persecution in Mecca. They had fought by his side at Badr, Uhud, and the Battle of the Trench. To them, it seemed only natural that leadership should now pass into their hands. For had they not sacrificed their wealth, their families, and even their lives for the sake of Islam? Their leader, Sa'd ibn Ubadah, lay ill but was carried into the assembly to be considered as a possible successor. Passionate voices rose among the Ansar, affirming that they had borne the burden of protecting the Prophet and therefore had the right to lead after him. But word of this gathering soon reached the Muhajirun, the emigrants from Mecca. They rushed to the Saqifah, led by Abu Bakr, Umar, and Abu Ubaidah. In the Arab world of the 7th century, lineage and tribal standing were not small matters. They were the foundation of authority and respect. The Muhajirun feared that if leadership passed outside Quraysh, the unity of the wider Arab tribes might shatter. The hall grew tense as voices from both sides rose. The Ansar insisted on their sacrifices and loyalty. The Muhajirun emphasized the Prophet's lineage and the need for broader acceptance among the tribes. It was not just a political debate. It was a crossroads for the future of the Muslim community, a decision that would shape history itself. The debate inside the Saqifah grew louder and more heated. Voices rose, arguments clashed, and the tension in the hall could almost be felt in the air. The Ansar put forward Sa'd ibn Ubadah as their candidate, declaring that no one had been more devoted in defending the Prophet and protecting Islam in Medina. Some among them even suggested a compromise, that there could be 2 leaders, one from the Ansar and one from the Muhajirun. But Abu Bakr, calm yet resolute, stood to speak. His words carried both authority and gentleness, appealing to reason rather than passion. He reminded the assembly that the Prophet himself had said, "The leaders should be from Quraysh." This, he argued, was not only a matter of tribal pride, but of practical necessity, for Quraysh held influence and respect among all the Arab tribes. If leadership went elsewhere, the fragile unity of the Muslim community could unravel. To demonstrate humility, Abu Bakr did not put himself forward at first. Instead, he nominated 2 of the most respected men present, Umar ibn al-Khattab and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. Both were pillars of the early Muslim community, trusted and admired. Yet before either could respond, Umar rose decisively. He shook his head and declared that no one was more deserving than Abu Bakr himself. In a moment that would change the course of history, Umar stepped forward, took Abu Bakr's hand, and pledged his allegiance. His voice cut through the noise of debate, and others soon followed. What had been a hall filled with clashing arguments was suddenly shifting toward unity, though not without hesitation and lingering resentment from some of the Ansar. The first pledge to Abu Bakr marked the birth of the caliphate, In that tense gathering, Umar grasped Abu Bakr's hand and pledged allegiance, declaring him the new leader, the Caliph of the Muslims. His action carried great weight, and one by one others followed, placing their hands in Abu Bakr's as a sign of unity. The hall, which only moments before had echoed with sharp arguments, now resounded with pledges of loyalty. Yet beyond the walls of the Saqifah, not everyone agreed. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin, his son-in-law, and the first young man to have embraced Islam, did not see the matter as settled. To Ali and many of the Prophet's family, his closeness to Muhammad, his deep knowledge of the Quran, and his sacrifices in battle gave him a stronger claim to leadership. By his side stood Fatima, the Prophet's beloved daughter, grieving not only for the loss of her father, but also for what she saw. As a denial of her husband's right, she voiced her sorrow and disapproval. For her, leadership was not simply a matter of tribal politics, but of spiritual inheritance and loyalty to the Prophet's household. Thus, even as Abu Bakr was publicly recognized as caliph, a quiet division had begun to take root within the community. It was not an open rebellion, nor an immediate rupture, but a lingering wound beneath the surface. What began as a difference over succession would, in time, grow into one of the deepest and most lasting divisions in Islamic history, shaping the identities of Sunni and Shia for centuries to come. In the weeks that followed, the debates did not subside. Ali delayed pledging allegiance to Abu Bakr, a silence that spoke louder than words. In his eyes, the question of leadership was not resolved through hurried pledges at the Saqifah, but through principles of closeness to the Prophet, knowledge of the Quran, and devotion to Islam from its earliest days. Fatima, the Prophet's daughter, carried both grief and indignation in her heart. Among her sorrows was the dispute over Fadak, a fertile piece of land she believed she had inherited from her father, when Abu Bakr ruled that the Prophet's property was not to be inherited but would remain a trust. For the community, Fatima felt deeply wronged. To her, it was not just about land, it was about recognition, dignity, and the honor of her father's household. These disputes reflected a greater struggle that ran beneath the surface. Who held true authority after the Prophet? Was it to be determined by kinship to Muhammad, by the bonds of his bloodline? Or was it to be entrusted to those chosen by the community for their leadership and seniority among the companions? The tension was never fully resolved. Though Ali eventually gave his pledge to Abu Bakr for the sake of unity, the memory of those weeks left lasting scars. They marked the beginning of a question that would echo across generations, shaping the identity of the Muslim world for centuries to come. Though Ali eventually gave his allegiance to Abu Bakr for the sake of unity, the wounds of those early days never fully healed. Beneath the surface of outward agreement, questions lingered. Questions about legitimacy, justice, and the rightful path of succession. These early disagreements were not forgotten. They lived on in the memories of the Prophet's family, in the hearts of their followers, and in the stories passed down through generations. From this unresolved tension, two great traditions would later emerge within Islam, Sunni and Shia. At first, the differences were political, centered on leadership and succession, but as decades passed, they deepened into matters of theology, spirituality, and identity. For Sunnis, authority was tied to the consensus of the community and the leadership of the caliphs. For Shias, true guidance rested with the family of the Prophet, those who carried his bloodline and his legacy. What began in the shaded hall of the Saqifah as a political dispute would, over time, evolve into a profound spiritual and theological divide. This divide would shape dynasties and revolutions, inspire devotion and scholarship, and spark conflicts that echoed across centuries. It became one of the defining currents of Islamic history, reminding us that the choices made in moments of crisis can shape the destiny of entire civilizations.